So in this video, what I want to show you is how I frame out my eaves. It's not necessarily the right way. There are millions of different ways of doing it, but this is the best way I found. So basically, once you're ready to put your roof on, obviously you're going to put your fascia on, and you may get that done in timber fascia, or you might get a metal fascia done. Personally, in this day and age, I prefer a metal fascia. But the big thing to remember with the fascia is that the groove in the fascia has to be below the end of your rafters or your truss tails. Otherwise, you're never going to get your sheets in. So, first thing I do is I go up to the end of one run of wall and I put in a piece of timber that runs back along my wall, probably the same length that it sticks out past the wall, and I nail that off to the actual wall, and it's going to sit about 10 mil above my brickwork. Now, hopefully, if you gave the bricklayer a drop-off height, he's laid the brickwork to the drop-off, so that's going to give you about 10 mil clearance below your eave. So this piece of timber technically should run from just above that groove level along your wall. So there should actually be, let's get under here, so there you can see it sits just above the groove and it runs level, nailed back to the actual wall frame. And you can do the same about halfway along. Okay, if you can get it to nail off to the side of the rafter, that's pretty good. You really need that. And again, 10 mil clearance there, and then the same at the other end. Now, obviously, if the bricklayer just lays the brickwork up to a height, and you have to box the eave out around the bricks, then you're not going to be able to do this step. But you can pretty much work it with the next step. So in between those pieces, I'm going to run a piece of timber. So at the moment, that's only supported at both ends, so it's just flopping around all over the place. But then I'll put in some trimmers or some droppers that come down off my rafter or off my truss down onto the framing material. These are generally tile batten or little bits off cut, whatever you can find around the place. Doesn't need to be anything too fancy. So then you can then cut in your trimmers. Well, we'll get back to that and zoom in down here. So you put a trimmer in, nail it flush to the bottom of the framing member there, and it should end up inside the wall. Get out of there. It should end up with the flush with the bottom of the groove there as well. Okay, so that's just running just on the outside of the brickwork, 10 mil above it, so you can nail your sheet up outside the brickwork. Now, fly around the house. With the windows, commonly the windows are set in half a brick or so from the actual the outside of the brickwork. So you need to do something a little bit different around the windows because we need more support. So what I commonly do at the windows is I'll nail that batten onto the actual frame of the window. And that just gives me some support right up against the wall. And if you do that for every window, then you can drop your trimmers in. And then where we've got a bit of brickwork here and we need support out here, you can then put your trimmer or just a short length of timber in between those to pick up the sheet and the moulding from underneath there. Now here we've got a corner here, and later on we're going to have to put some moulding around here and return it back into our window just to finish everything off. So we need to think about providing some blocking Oh, we can throw trimmers in there as well, sorry. But we need to think about throwing some blocking in that actually supports the corner of that sheet, or corner of the sheet, and it's going to support our moulding when we put our moulding in around here. There won't be any moulding across the window, so we don't need to worry too much about that. The fibre of cement should slide straight in above the top of the window. So our clearance there. You can still see our clearance. And we put our sheets in right round, and then obviously to finish everything off we need to put a type of moulding. You can use anything you like, quad, square, scotia, doesn't really matter as long as it covers up the gap. And the whole idea of that 10mm gap is to give us some allowance for when the timber frame shrinks and the studs shrink in length and the whole house settles down under the weight of the roof. That 10mm gap means that the roof won't exert any pressure onto the brickwork, and the timber frame will remain the load-bearing element of the house. So everything gets a quad mould or some sort of moulding just to finish it off. So the important things to remember with your eave is that your framing must be sturdy, must be able to take the weight of the sheet. It must give the 10mm clearance to allow the frame to settle, and just throwing the fibre cement in and sitting a brick on top of it is not an acceptable method of construction. It actually needs to be properly framed out. So there you go, that's my way of framing out an eave.